Afternoon, and welcome to the 11th meeting of the Civilian Review Board. Excused from today's meeting is Mr. Aragon, Mr. Fluharty, Dr. Jones, and Ms. Younger. They are excused, so we are a smaller group today. Let me first thank you, thank Vice Chair Burns for last month's meeting. It seemed as if it was a robust one. I still have to watch the video. As I just told Brooke, I was in such excruciating pain with my back that I wasn't watching anything, just trying to get through it until I could see a physician. And Reverend Tatum, they took my golf clubs away for the summer. So I won't see you on the course.
Sorry to ask you about that.
No, he said no golf. So
All right.
whatever. But it's good to be here. It's good to be with each of you. The first thing that I would do is to ask for approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? Then all in favor of the passage of the minutes, please raise your hands. Motion passes, and since I was not at the meeting and I haven't watched, I'm simply not voting on that particular matter. I don't think that would be appropriate. And now I am going to basically turn this meeting over. She has the probably the end, I won't say, I don't know if it's the entire 3 hours, but it's a long time, to Inspector General Hendricks.
Well, I want to say good afternoon, Madam Chair and honorable board members. I'm really excited because it gives me a chance this time to kind of give you an update of where the department is. And also, before we get there, to introduce the staff that I have hired for the Department of Inspector General. What I'll be doing, and this is just a brief agenda, is introducing the staff. I'll give you a department update, and then we'll talk about the department goals for June. And at the end, if there's any questions, I will answer any questions that you have. I want to introduce HR Manager Tammy Bethay. She has been very helpful and instrumental in the process of hiring our investigators, along with sitting on the review panel. So if I can get Tammy to stand up.
Nice to meet everyone.
Very much. I know without knowing specifically that this has been time-consuming and challenging. I even know, and I didn't mention this to Ms. Hendricks, that I think an offer was made and accepted, and then the person changed her mind. And I only know that because I ran into her at Lowe's, and she told me. She actually was the person who, for one meeting, served on this board, but because of the Attorney General's office, declined, and there was a reason here. So I know how hard it is to put a team together. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I want to tell you, really just, I mean, she's being very modest, but she will tell you I gave her a timeline with dates of virtual interviews, dates of in-person interviews, and when the applications were coming in, I'm like, hey, do we have them yet? Oh, I haven't had a chance to review them. I was like, can I get them tomorrow? I mean, she has been so gracious, and she's just been wonderful. So I really want you to understand just how helpful and aggressive, she has. So again, with that saying, let's introduce the staff. I'm going to have each one come to the podium and give anywhere from a 3 to 5 minute background about themselves. And then after the meeting, if you want to walk up and talk to them, please feel free to. So the first person is going to be Alicia. Is that pronounced that Plyform? Pfeiffer, thank you.
Make sure you can hear me. First, hello everyone. My name is Alicia Pfeiffer,
And I would like to say just thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and meet with everyone. And I would like to say thank you to IG Hendricks, as well as Deputy Blunt and Tammy Bethea for this wonderful opportunity. I also have to say thank you to Tammy as well, simply because I am a Baltimore City resident. I did relocate for this position, and she was very helpful as far as, assisting me with the interview times and even helping me find some housing. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you, Tammy. Just to give you a little information regarding my background, I received my bachelor's as well as my master's degree in criminal justice. And along with my master's program, I actually received a trauma-informed certification with that. That certification is pretty much ideal for criminal justice professionals to help you be able to identify individuals that were possibly traumatized, as well as how to interact with them, teach them different coping mechanisms and things of that nature. As far as my employment history, I have 4 years of law enforcement experience working with Johns Hopkins University as a commissioned police officer. While I was there, we did some preliminary investigations as well as, different trainings for some gang-related violence, as well as gang tactics, community policing, things of that nature. I also became a field training officer where I assisted other employees that were hired with the different training when we brought them on, taught them different policies and things of that nature. I was also in the call center as well, where I learned how to operate that, as well as speaking with different complainants or any problems that they had on or off the campus. And I was able to dispatch the officers and review any camera footage to make sure that they were safe, as well as the complainants or anyone in the area, just to assist them with that process. Prior to accepting this employment here with the City of Columbus, I was a special agent investigator with the Baltimore City Office of the Inspector General. With my time there, we would investigate fraud, waste, and abuse of Baltimore City government funding, agencies, and any personnel. Some of the investigation that I've worked on consist of procurement fraud, employee misconduct, and any bribery, whistleblower cases, things of that nature. Some of my duties that I would complete there would be obtaining complainant, witness, and subject interviews, and I would transcribe those interviews and upload that to our case management tracking system. And I would also review different documents such as timesheets, any vehicle navigating systems, as well as email change documents, procurement, and contract agreements as well. During my time at the Baltimore City Office of the Inspector General, I also became responsible for the hotline. We received any complaints, whether it was via phone, email, online walk-ins, through other agents as well, and even some other agencies. And I would take that information, determine if it did fall under the purview of investigations for that agency. Once I did that and the information was uploaded to the case management system, I would provide that information to my deputy and they would assign the cases accordingly. I would assist with writing reports as well as referrals for any cases that did not fall within our purview or the office did not have jurisdiction with that. I would draft the referrals, send them to my supervisor, and they would send those out accordingly just so that our office can assist with compliance and making sure that the policies were followed that the City of Baltimore had. And under the Association of Inspectors General, I also received my Certified Inspector General Investigator certification, and that's under the Association of Inspectors General. So with that certification, the CIGI, that's what they call it, that curriculum, it covers the investigative processes as well as professional standards for conducting investigations in ethics in investigations, legal issues, procurement fraud, as well as computer crime and investigative techniques and working with auditors. So that training was very helpful, especially when it came to working with different agencies and making sure that we were able to assist them as much as possible. So I believe that with the skills and the background that I have, I will be able to give something to this agency as well as assist others in the community and the police division as well. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I look forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is going to be Scott Hurler.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ms. Jackson, thank you very much for having us here. To the board, thank you guys. This is a wonderful opportunity. This is a great opportunity to bridge the gap between the citizens and the police department, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that. So my name is Scott Hurler. I come from Arizona, moved to Virginia for the military. I was in the Marine Corps for 11 years. I spent my time in the reserves, working in counterintelligence, human intelligence. The purview of investigations and other types of work that we did was significant. It's the Marine Corps, so we were very flexible in everything that we did, and we spent a lot of time doing everything from investigations to threat vulnerability assessments and assessments of different entities throughout the Marine Corps. I have a bachelor's degree from Capital that is in interdisciplinary studies with concentrations in Homeland Security and Intelligence. Additional training that I have is also continued education for the police department. I work concurrently with the police department in Norfolk, Virginia while I was in the reserves. I spent 7 years with the Norfolk Police Department there, and most of my time was spent in investigations. I worked everything from property crimes to violent crimes to economic crimes. My specialty unit was with the gang suppression unit. We did 25% investigations and about 75% community outreach, where we were able to divert most of the people that we're coming in contact with away from the criminal justice system and into programs to get them out of organized crime and out of the criminal justice system. On top of that, I also went through some mid-level management courses through Marine Corps University. I spent about 180 days or 1,500 hours for my CI human courses, just learning everything about being a counterintelligence agent and a human intelligence specialist. I am a licensed private investigator. My most recent work was with a company called Covent Bridge Group. It's an international consultation firm. They do mostly insurance work, so it was a lot of insurance fraud, and we had a few things. I was licensed here and in West Virginia. We had a couple of cases as far as Medicaid and Medicare fraud as well, but mostly it was just typical insurance fraud for car insurance, homeowners insurance, things to that nature. When I left the police department, I did spend some time with Amazon Web Services. I kind of forget about that sometimes because I got out of investigations, went into the private sector. I thought I would like to do that, and I decided that I preferred to give back to the community. I wanted to get back into investigations, so that was when I reached out and went with Covent Bridge Group and began looking for more work with a city or state entity where I could give back to my community. When I found out about this opportunity, I knew this would be a great place for me to go, where I could, interject my expertise as being both a civilian coming all the way through, with the reserves, having my personal time, and the time that I spent with the police department, bringing those two together and helping bridge that gap between the police department and the community. Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Logan.
Hi, as IG mentioned, my name is Logan Contos. Just like Alicia and Scott, I want to first start off just by saying how honored and thankful I am to be given an opportunity to be a part of this department, work alongside IG Hendricks, Deputy Blunt, and the fellow investigators. A little bit about my background. I received my bachelor's degree from Ohio State University, where I majored in criminology and psychology. I am currently furthering my education and will graduate in August of this year with my master's degree in criminal justice with a concentration in criminal behavior from Tiffin University. I have a little over 5.5 years of experience working in various roles throughout the criminal justice system here in Columbus, all of which have involved investigating or interviewing. I started off my career interning with the Columbus Division of Police, where I interned with one of their criminal intelligence analysts in crimes against persons, helped gather intelligence, create reports and different documents. I then went to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office, worked in both the criminal division and the drug division there. And then for the past 4 years, I was employed at the Columbus City Attorney's Office, working in their domestic violence and stalking unit, interviewing victims of crime, using trauma-informed care tactics, help prepare cases for prosecution, gathering certain evidence. To do that at the City Attorney's Office, I also became very familiar with how to use their case management system, Matrix, which is the case management system we will also be using here at the Inspector General's. Again, it's an honor, very excited to be a part of this very diverse and motivated team, and look forward to the positive impact that we're going to have on the City of Columbus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Enoch White. I think we refer to him as Skip.
All right, hello all. I am happy to be here. I do see some familiar faces from my travels in life. I'm going to go ahead and give you a little background on myself. I am a family man. We have 4 children. I've been married for almost 28 years, and I am also a Christian. I think those 2 things about me kind of focused decisions I've made and got me in the positions that I'm at now. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I went to middle school on the west side of Dayton and graduated high school in Centerville, which is the south part of Dayton. And I then went to the Ohio State University and obtained my criminology degree in 1984. I enjoyed my time there. I returned home and decided I need to, pay for my student loans, so I applied for jobs in law enforcement and was hired by the Columbus Police in 1985. I graduated from the police academy then, and I've been on the police department at that time for almost 33 years. Had a lot of assignments and enjoyed my time there also. I retired in 2018 when I was recruited and offered a position at Urbana University as the security manager. Enjoyed that position also. Urbana is just north of Springfield for people that don't know, about 23 miles. D2 school, heavy in athletics. I did a lot of mentoring with the students there, and our goal was to make sure that they finished school, so I enjoyed my time there. And then the pandemic hit in 2020, and the school just didn't survive that situation, and it closed. I was retained as a security manager and also had a dual job at Franklin University as a security manager. I don't know if you knew this, but Franklin does own the property at Urbana. So I did become aware of this position as an investigator with the Attorney General. I thought it was perfect because of the events that happened last summer. It was just tough to watch, and if I could do anything to help out, I did. And luckily, with the vision of the IG and the deputy and also the help of the HR manager, I was offered a position. Now, a little bit about my investigative experience. It was my first taste of it was when I worked narcotics. I did investigations there, interviews, and casework at the federal, state, and local level. Also, I returned back to narcotics and worked on a state task force that focused on interdiction of drugs to the Columbus area. We were tied in with the U.S. Customs, and that was strictly casework, interviews, and link analysis. I finished about half my career was in SWAT. Another great job I loved. But when we weren't doing tactical operations, we were looking for, the violent felons. And with those interviews and searches, I end up talking to a lot of victims and also the suspects' families also. So through those interactions, I learned about empathy, you know, and really separate myself and just listening to them and really convincing people, you know, that what I promised I would do as far as making sure people surrendered, make sure they were safe, and follow through all that. So I really like interpersonal relationships and really in shortcuts also. Another thing I really like to do was I volunteered for the oral boards, and that was interviewing officers, potential officers, candidates for the police department. And that was an interesting thing also because I got to, you know, interview them, you know, in the board setting and really just dig into, you know, why they really wanted to be a police officer and just kind of weed out the ones that, you know, may not make it, but also encourage the ones that we thought were going to be good. And that way I was, you know, trying to get involved with making change, you know, from the inside. At Urbana University, I was involved with some sensitive investigations that involved student-on-student and staff members, so that was another part. I got to tell you, I'm going to touch on my motivation. My motivation is probably the same as everybody in this room, you know, to try to bridge and rebuild a relationship with the Columbus Police and the community. And like I said, it was just tough to watch. And I'm so glad that I have this position now to go ahead and support that and really affect change through these investigations that we're all going to be part of and make sure they're fact-based so you can make your determination and make the changes that you need to do. Again, I thank the board and all your members for your dedication in doing this and being involved with this. And also, I just want to let you know that the director and the deputy director are, you know, I went through a pretty good interview process, and it was fair but firm. But I can tell you with their leadership, just in the first week, you know, we're going to do a lot of good things. And I can tell you that the team we have here is really diverse, and I think that's a great decision and great leadership as far as that. I thank you.
Thank you.
And our last investigator to introduce is going to be Al Crawford.
Good afternoon. Some of you I know, but it's so good to see you all. My name is Al Crawford. Chair Jackson, Civilian Police Review Board members, IG Hendricks, Deputy IG Blunt, Ms. Bethea and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as an investigator for the Department of the Inspector General with this great city of Columbus. What an honor. What an honor it is. I am truly grateful for this opportunity. I've been with the OIG for 5 days, and in those 5 days, I've witnessed a group of select investigators that mirror leadership. We are skilled, we are focused, we are determined, we are experienced, we are committed to the task that is before us. I am truly grateful for this opportunity to work with the best of the best. I'm excited to contribute in the efforts of this office by utilizing my work experience, skills, and talents. My education includes 3 years with Capital University, majoring in criminology. I have a 2-year paralegal certification from the Ohio Paralegal Academy. I have a interview and interrogation certification from John Reed and Associates. I also hold a investigator and inspector certification from the Council of Licensure, Enforcement, and Regulation. I bring almost 20 years of administrative law investigative experience to the Office of the Inspector General. My work history includes 4 years, Franklin County Municipal Court Civil Criminal and Traffic Divisions, where I met you, Chair. 12 years with the Ohio Department of Education, teacher misconduct investigations. 7 years with Franklin County Job and Family Services, investigating public assistance fraud and food assistance trafficking. And 6 months with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, where G. Michael Payton sends his greetings. My hope is to learn and grow with the other investigators as we ethically pursue trust and transparency while investigating allegations of police misconduct. Again, I wish to thank you for this opportunity, this great opportunity to serve with the Department of the Inspector General. And lastly, in the words of the former great OSU coach Tressel, let's get after it.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to introduce my team to everyone. Please feel free afterwards if you have any questions or you want to interact with them. Please feel free. I'm going to go right ahead
Well, I'll
and
just say this. I love the diversity. I love the diversity. And we'll get to know them.
thank you. There's a lot to go through, and I changed my arrangement a little bit. So what I wanted to still advise the board is staff positions. We still have a position that we'll be filling for executive secretary for our office. We will be doing in-person interviews on Thursday. We have 3 people that will be interviewing for that position. We have another executive position, which will be to the board. That person will be the liaison that will be replacing Colleen, but that'll be the liaison for the board also. That person will handle a lot of the reports, any requests or anything that the board has. If anybody wants to talk to me afterwards about some other things that they would like to see, please feel free to do that. That position is posted already. We also have a posting out there for our community relations coordinator. Again, sometimes it's good to kind of make those announcements if somebody's watching. That's posted out there on the city website. I believe most of those postings will be closing in about 2 weeks, so we will be reviewing those applications once the posting has occurred. When we get into the staff training, what I did is I gave you an overview. Some of the training has been scheduled, and the ones that have been scheduled is the introduction for charter review, victim engagement and trauma. We also have criminal investigations and Fourth Amendment search and seizure, FOP contract, Article 8, and ride-alongs. All of those are scheduled. We have dates, and they will be doing that over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to do a point out to our attorney here, Mrs. Ross, because I believe she is going to be one of the instructors. And while our team has not met our attorney, but there is Attorney Ross, and she'll be invited to come into the office and get a chance to meet all of you. Some of the training that we're just waiting for dates is the ABCs of policing, implicit bias and cultural competency, and then also crash, or I might be pronouncing that wrong, but that's more of our
Active shooter, civilian response to active shooter events.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
It stands for civilian response to active shooter events.
Okay.
we thought that would be.
Craze.
Craze, thank you. We thought that would be really good training. We know there's a lot that's going on, so that's kind of important for us to do that. We also have one of our own in-house investigators that's going to put something briefly together for the team for the location we're at right now, so we know our exits if something was to happen, where we would be leaving out, where we would be meeting up, and think that's important, especially for our temporary location, and then we'll do another training once we're in our permanent location. So continuing on with our updates, I am so excited to say that the renovations started yesterday. But I walked up and I saw all the drywall coming in. I was like, great, great, great. You know, so we're excited. So it is definitely started. We're in our temporary space right now, which is 150 South 4th Street. That is not open to the public, and I just want to make that announcement because it seems like we've had a couple of people that have attempted to get access to our office. But we are not open to the public right now. Once we are open to the public, which will be in July the 11th, we will, at the next meeting, which is July meeting, we will give more instructions as to how that is going to work. Simply because the lobby there, we share with other entities that are in that building, so we want to make sure that everybody is safe, and we want to make sure if any citizens want to come and file a complaint or they want to have a meeting with any of the investigators, that they know that they'll have to do that by either, with the investigators, they'll definitely need to make an appointment because we want to make sure the investigators are in the office. But if they're coming to file a complaint, we just need to give them more instructions on that. Main line, hotline, and email. We do have a main line. I'm just not going to give the number out right now because nobody is answering that simply because we're not open for business. We also have a hotline that we've established, and we're working on, that's going to be a recorded line that citizens will be able to call and file an allegation if they like. And then email is another way that citizens will be able to access if they want to file a complaint or make an allegation. That's another access. All of that we do have available, and if anybody wants that after the meeting, we definitely can give you that. We will be announcing that at our July meeting. Website, I'm going to try to see if I can you click on that? I'm sorry.
Forget this, and we'll need to address it. Our next meeting will fall on July the 5th, which of course is the day after July 4th, the holiday. I know that many times families and individuals take vacations, et cetera, around that time of the year. So I'm going to ask Colleen as quickly as possible to poll all the board members after this meeting, alerting them to that fact, and then ascertaining if they plan on attending the meeting on July 5th. We just may need to move that meeting. I don't know until I get the responses, but wanted to make sure that we do, in fact, look at that, Colleen, okay?
Colleen, are you able to hit that so we can bring up the website? We can close it back out and go back. So what I wanted to do is give the board just a little bit of a preview for the website that we have been putting together. It is just a draft. We are still working. Some of the things that we will be putting on there is a copy of the form. So if citizens want to fill out a form and submit it. We have some questions there that talks about Q&A, questions that people may have about what type of complaints or reports that they can file with our office. So we're still in the process of doing that, but what I did want to do is at least show a portion of that to the board so the board is aware of the site and just kind of see how we're putting that design together. We'll be working along with, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation, but we are working with a PR group along with working with the city's web people to continue to design this and add information. And this will be a growing site. So as time goes on, we'll be adding more things to that, more information. And as you can see, one of the things that we did is we have a link on there to the Civilian Review Board in case people have some questions and want some more information about the board. Thank you, Colleen. I want to talk about our case management system. The case management system that we're going to be using is Matrix Investigator. Again, this is going to be a case management system that's going to house all of our information documents. It's also going to be the system that will allow us to track our investigations, track our complaints. Right now, the installation process is due to start on June 16th. And then the training for the staff is going to be on July 8th and 9th. They definitely need to have the system installed, work out some of the kinks and things before we actually start training on the system. I'm excited. I think the system is going to be really good. We're working on different features so that we can kind of track whether the complaints come in are misconduct, use of force, excessive use of force, and then the type of excessive use of force. This is going to help me when we're meeting with the board and I can provide reports to the board and be able to answer some of the questions that the board is going to want to know. Questions like how many complaints do we get in? From those complaints, how many complaints were initiated to investigations. Based on the investigations you did, how many were misconduct, what type of misconduct, how many were excessive use of force, what types of excessive use of force. This system is going to allow us to track that and to be able to answer those questions. With the engagement plan, I just want to kind of go over some of the people that I've met with. So the engagement plan has continued. I've met with the mothers of Murder Columbus children. I had an opportunity to go to the Chief Advisory Board. I thought that was really great. The chief was there. We had a question that one of the board members had, panel members had asked regarding policies. How are policies revised within the Columbus Police Division? And the question was, do we route that to the chief or do we route that to your agency? How does it look? And what I loved is the fact that the chief said, hey, yes, you can route that to me, but also if there are reports and things as the Department of Inspector General is investigating cases and they find that there's a policy and procedure that needs to be changed, they will be presenting that to the board and the board will be presenting that to me, and that's another way that I'll be able to see whether or not some policies and procedures need to be changed. And I thought that was really great. Some of the other organizations I met with was Columbus Partnership, met with the Department of Neighborhoods.
Did you actually meet with the individuals who make up the Columbus Partnership, or did you meet with their staff?
I met with the two individuals. So I met with Jeff, I'm going to probably jack up his last name, and then I also met with
Did you meet with Kenny McDonald?
Kenny McDonald, yes. Those are the two people. And one of the things that I have done with every different organization I've met with is just trying to find out how we can either partner with them, whether in doing our community outreach or if they have constituents and they've got information that they can provide to us. So I love having those contacts. Met with the Department of Neighborhoods. That was really good information. They're definitely going to be agency that is going to assist us with our outreach program. Had a chance to meet with the Franklin Community Board Commissioners. I met with Kevin Boyce, and I also met with Erica Crowley. I had a chance to meet with Human Services Chamber, along with the Ohio State University Public Safety Police Chair. So going in.
Service Chamber is actually made up of nonprofits here in the community. Not all of them. I'm not sure what their membership is now, but a significant number of the nonprofits belong to the Human Service Chamber.
And going on to the community outreach campaign, what I want to just share with that is I had a chance to meet with Ms. Younger, and we talked about where that's going to go for the month of June. June into July is the month that we aggressively would like to get out there and start engaging in the community. So we talked to that. I know she's reaching back out to some of the different members on her subcommittee, and we'll be working together with that. I also invited her to the meeting, which will be on tomorrow with the Saunders PR group, because they are also going to be helping us with the community outreach program. So I invited her, so she'll be attending that tomorrow. So we did get the funding. Sometimes the reason that we may be meeting with some people kind of late is some of the proposals that we submit, I just wait until the proposal is approved. So we have the funding, and so all of that has been approved. And so based on that, that's why we're ended up meeting with the Saunders group. We'll be meeting with them tomorrow. And we also, again, I put on there the Department of Neighborhoods, because we were working with them as to going out with the different communities. They have also opened up for us when we hire our community relations officer, our community relations coordinator, that they will work with them also with helping them get acclimated with the different neighborhoods, and we'll develop a partnership there too.
So do you anticipate that by the July board meeting, that you, working with Ms. Younger, you will have a plan, and when I say a plan, you will have identified, we're going to go to this area commission on such and such a date, and had that all scheduled?
Definitely. And I'm hoping that even between now and July, we would have already done some engagement with some of those communities.
Well, I will remind you that board members, what we've talked about, and we would keep it to a small number, maybe one, two, no more than three, wanted to participate in these meetings. So we need to have that schedule, those dates, and then the actual opportunity to sign up for them. It's my recall from listening to the board over the months that is very, very, very important to them. I mean, we may have our own engagement plan, but the ability to go out, do we have maps yet?
Yeah, so me and Ms. Younger have shared communication. I don't know if she
No.
has reached out to you yet.
Okay, all right. But again, I just want to remind you, because even if you're talking about June, then you're going to have a communication with the board to see if folks are interested in that. And it
Absolutely.
might be difficult for me to kind of manage, because I do believe that there should be at least one board member at every single commission meeting. And I think we said that there are 21 area commissions.
Yes.
And so again, if we could just kind of, have in mind the time frame, are you talking about over 60 days or 90 days or whatever? But we would prefer to have that sooner rather than later. Okay?
I'm going to make a note of that, and we can talk after. You can just let me know when we start meeting. We can send those emails out and start putting all of that agenda out. So what I want to do is kind of get a little bit more into the processes so the board understands some of the processes. So this is the citizen complaint intake process. And what you'll notice, I don't know if do I have a laser? No. So the first process just talks about filing complaint. As you can see, a citizen can file a complaint in person, via the telephone, mail. Electronic submissions basically means they can do it on the website. When it talks about and initiated by the board. These are the ways that complaints are going to come into our office. Once the complaints are received, all of the complaints are going to be entered into our case management system. Yes.
Before you move on, at our last meeting, we had a pretty verbose conversation about the complaints being initiated by members of the board. Can you remind me, someone, what we decided about that? Because remember we were talking like, if we're out in public and someone comes up to us and was like, hey, yo, this happened to me, blah, blah, blah. I thought we were on the same page that we didn't want to bear that responsibility of reporting these. So can we make sure we're on the same page about that? And so I guess my first question will be to you, what, in your opinion, does that look like when you say initiated by a member of the Civilian Police Review Board? And then to the other members of the board, what did we decide about that? Because I think we have to be really clear about how we take, or if we're even going to take them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. Just for clarity, so in our rules and regulations, for the board to submit a complaint, we all have to actually, there has to be moved and seconded and voted for it to be submitted by us. Or a person could conceivably walk into a board meeting with their complaint in hand, but someone from the IG's office would actually be here to receive it. So that way it's not filtering through us, but it's just happening here. And then if an individual board member has a complaint, then they are a regular citizen filing the complaint. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Is that what?
And I think as you were just sharing your example, you're just out and someone comes up to you, we would need to be, and I'll use the term armed with like hot cards or something that we should probably carry, but we would simply should give that to the individual and then say, this is how you can file a complaint. Right, we're not taking a complaint orally and then submitting it. Mr. Tobias?
Yeah, just to refresh you from the last meeting, the complaints by individuals are going to go directly to the Department of the IG. So if somebody were to walk in at a meeting, they're just to be directed to the Department of the IG to turn in.
The minutes say. I was just reading that particular portion of the minutes that dealt with that. You can read it for yourself in section 1.
The initiation by the board, I think what was anticipated is if a board member became aware of a situation out in the community where a citizen had not filed a complaint, but the board felt that it was something that the Department of the IG should look into, there could be discussion, a motion, a second, a vote, and then if there was majority vote to forward that to the IG, that would happen.
Okay, perfect, thank you. I just wanted to be sure about that from our last conversation, so.
Okay, and just, just clarifying, so an in-person could be somebody walking into the meeting. We will have an investigator here with a complaint form, and that would be filing that in person. Initiated by the board is just that the board agreeing, coming together, having a concern, making a vote, and deciding that they want to initiate that complaint. Again, that would be a complaint that would be initiated by the board, because that does not come from the complainant. And so I'll go on when it says case management. All complaints will go into the case management system. All the complaints will be assigned a unique number. This allows us to track the number of complaints that we're having. Everything will be into the system, and this, again, allows us to be able to track the complaints and information that we're receiving. The complaints will be evaluated, and the evaluation will give us 3 results. The evaluation of the complaints, 1, would be closed. A complaint that is closed is because it's just insufficient information. It's not even enough information for us to make a determination whether or not we have jurisdiction over it, or if it even involved a Columbus police officer. So in those instances, that complaint would just be closed. Forwarded to another agency, depending on what the complaint is. If it's a criminal matter, we're an administrative investigation agency, so we would not be able to investigate that, so therefore we would be forwarding that on to another investigative agency. And then it really just depends on the complaint. If the complaint is involving something, maybe a problem with HR or hiring, again, that doesn't fall within our jurisdiction, so that would be something that we would be forwarding on to another agency. If the complaint falls within our jurisdiction and under our charter mandate, then that complaint, again, will be initiated into an investigation. That will be giving another unique identifying number. The reason that I want to be able to,
Sorry, IG. The criminal matter kind of referral process. So can you imagine a scenario where an investigation starts? During the course of the investigation, it is determined by your staff that there are co-occurring issues, where there could very well be a criminal complaint that is filed, but there could also be a violation of policy, procedure, or practice that exists within a department. Is there possibility for those 2 things to coexist? So there's a forward off to whether it's city attorney or prosecutor or whomever, and then also there's still a complaint that goes to completion with a recommendation from your office.
So if we're conducting an investigation and we find criminality, we will have to stop, just kind of immediately stop. What we would end up doing is, again, referring that to another agency, but based on the FOP, and I also will refer to the attorney, so if I say something incorrect. So we would stop because we have 90 days to do an investigation. So we would stop, the timetable would stop, that would be referred. We would not investigate it together simply because if it's a criminal investigation, we will need to wait to see what that criminal outcome would be. Because if it comes back that that person is fired and let go, then there may not be a need to do disciplinary action because that person is no longer with the CPD Police Department. However, if they find criminality did not exist or they just weren't able to prove that, then it would come back, then our investigation would pick up, and then we would continue on with that administrative investigation.
Okay, thank you.
So again, once it's open into an investigation, it will get another unique identified number. The reason, again, is because I think it's important to track how many complaints we have coming in and the number of complaints that will be initiated into an investigation.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Going back to the closed complaint portion of your chart there, If you find that there's insufficient information to carry on or to move a case forward, what is the process for the complainant after that? The person that's actually making the complaint, do you guys notify them? What is the process after that?
What I envisioned for a closed complaint, that could be if someone gives us an anonymous complaint and we're not able to contact them, then we can't get any more information. Or if every complaint that is issued to an investigator, they will be contacting that complainant to gather more information. So there could possibly be a situation where they've contacted the complainant and they're trying to get more information and that complainant is just not responding. We will definitely do our due diligence to get the information, but if they don't give us enough information to continue that investigation, that again would be an investigation that we would close because we just don't have sufficient information. But we will be notating that so that the board would be aware of that, and so that if somebody did come to the board and said, hey, I filed a complaint, but nothing was done, we'll be able to show you the logs, the information, the letters that went out, even the fact that if the investigator goes out to the person's home to try to contact. We'll definitely do our due diligence.
Sorry, can I ask just a real quick question about this? I don't know if you have fleshed this part out as well, but is there going to be a mechanism in this process maybe to catch for complaints that might have been submitted anonymously out of fear of retaliation or anything like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, so some people may not feel safe to have their name on a complaint, but could have a complaint that is incredibly detailed, could have a ton of information. Is there a filtering process, or do you imagine one in a scenario to still be able to accommodate the need of the citizens, but also maintain how do you say the word? Anonymity, that word, throughout this process? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes, so we do, and hopefully I'm answering your question. So on the complaint form, which I'll show you, we do have where someone can check that they want to be anonymous. But the thing of it is, in any investigation, is that we're going to have information. We are putting together what we would call maybe a whistleblower policy, and we'll be working with, of course, this is the first time that Mrs. Ross is hearing this, but that's because the one thing, I say this because one of the things we were trying to do is making sure that for June, that we're up and ready, and all the little things that we need to tweak to be effective, that between June and July, we're working on that. So the whistleblower is one of the things that we were talking together as a staff. So the staff is not, we've talked about that, so we'll be definitely talking how that looks, because we had a question as to the status of whistleblower involving an officer that may want to come forward and may be concerned about any type of backlash for them coming forward. So that is something that we're looking at, and we're trying to address that. But what I will, kind of say to the citizens that are listening, the information for us to be able to conduct the investigation is really important, and we do understand that some people may want to file a complaint and remain anonymous, but the problem will always be is if we don't get enough information, we won't be able to do our investigation, and we want to make sure that the investigations that we do are thorough, because all of the reports that we do and the information that we're going to be presenting to the board is important, because the board has a decision to make, and we want to make sure that the board has all of the information that they need in order to make the decision that they need to make.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for this. Great to meet the full team as well. I just had a couple of questions. One is on, as it relates to the intake process, like how you all are kind of thinking about backlog and the potential for backlog, and what, you think the kind of best practice timeline is, an expectation of timeline from initiation to completion. Obviously, it's going to vary depending on the complexities of a particular situation, but just wanted that initial question. I'll leave that first question there, just if you had an answer or response to that.
So with the backlog, that is definitely something that we have talked about. We are looking to just make sure, training-wise, that when we get the complaints in, that we're investigating them and we're getting them out. We're actually putting together some letters, and we've reached out one of the letters we sent to the chief is, hey, who do you want us to send our letters to when we start requesting information? Because that stuff is coming out. I have a timeline and things, and I'll share that with you when we get into the investigative process to just kind of keep things and aggressively going through. As anything, it is unforeseen. We know that. I think I've shared to the board that we know that IAB had 441 complaints last year, and they have a staff of 18 sergeants. And so, I have a staff of 5 right now looking for one more. But they're aggressive, and as you can see, they're very well trained, and we're going to hit this floor running and be very aggressive in trying to get all of the reports out. And even though we will have 90 days to complete the investigation, my staff can tell you I've already told them I don't expect you to take 90 days. Some investigations may take a little bit longer simply because if they're thorough and they have to have a meeting with the officer, we don't know whether the officer is going to be on vacation or not. But we do know that the FOP gives us the ability that if we need to extend it, that we can submit a letter to them and ask that it be extended. And that would be if we're trying to get information or trying to meet with the officer and we're not able to. So again, just us keeping track of our process, our timelines, our letter is going to be very important for us to be able to support if we need more time.
Okay, and then just the question related to that, so thank you for that, it's helpful, is if there are multiple complaints towards a particular individual, this system is set up in a way in which does it kind of merge situations if it's for a singular incident, but different people have separate complaints against the same individual, or is that going to be on its own separate track as well?
So what I would envision is if we have, and hopefully I'm answering your question, if not, please let me know. So if we have a complaint if we get several complaints against one officer, we would have one investigator, and maybe I might add additional person, but we would just have one person investigating that with all of those complaints. But I need to have all of those complaints, but that might just be one investigation that is generated because the report will state X amount of complaints, X amount of people we talked to, and here is the investigation.
Yeah, helpful, thank you.
Sure.
Great to meet the board, or your staff rather. And I'm a bit confused. Maybe everybody else on the board understands this, and I'm the only one who doesn't. So we have a concrete situation of a complaint about excessive force, or a police shooting, or something that gets community attention. So complaint comes in, you investigate it, it is found that there's at least probable cause of criminality, so you then forward it to whom?
We will be forwarding that to an investigative agency, so that does not necessarily mean it would go to CPD. We're establishing some relationships with the prosecutor's office. It may even go to the attorney general's office. If it's a matter of a criminal case and we find criminality, we're going to stop. But we will be forwarding that to another agency. That's just not something. But we will make sure that there's enough information. And when I say enough information is that if we got the case and we don't know it's criminal, because if we get it initially complaint and it's criminal, obviously we would just stop and say, hey, advise that complainant, it's a criminal matter, it's not administrative. Here may be the agencies that you may want to refer your case to.
So it might go to the Attorney General, it might go to the police department.
County prosecutor, city prosecutor.
Right, okay.
Those are the types of agencies she's
So what is the
talking about.
interaction then of this board with the kinds of things that, I was thinking the reason for this board, that is that the energy that generated the board was in part this breakdown with of mistrust with the police department, that there had been some shootings, there were complaints about excessive force, There was, concerns about, civil rights violations. I'm just trying to, if the investigation stops and it goes to one of these other agencies, where do we come in? Like, how does the funnel get, like, what are the things that get funneled to us? Maybe everybody understands, I'm confused.
Some of it will unfold. So let's go with the most egregious one. It is alleged to be a murder. So we have two cases like that from December of 2020, right? And they would not have come to us. Those went to BCI, I believe. Well, the county prosecutor has changed. Certainly the former county prosecutor said that if it appeared to be a murder, it goes to BCI, which is the Attorney General's office. It would not be investigated by the prosecutor's office. I don't know if that has changed or not. And so those cases, we have no jurisdiction, over. They go to BCI, and then they'll be going to the county prosecutor's office. As we look at lesser type charges, and let's say it's an excessive use of force, but that could be seen as a felony assault.
Yes, exactly.
As a felony assault.
So that gets kicked out.
No.
Felony assault
well, there
doesn't
is-
get criminally charged, and
Well, the prosecutor has to make a decision
Right,
on that.
right.
It would come to us, could look at it and say, this rises to the level of a felony assault. It should be sent to the county prosecutor's office. Or if it's a misdemeanor assault, it would go to the city attorney's office. And then they conduct the investigation. And they have to conduct an investigation before they actually charge the person.
Right.
Just sending the complaint over there does not immediately mean there's going to be a charge. And so then if they charge the person, it goes forward as a trial or
Right,
something,
right,
or
right, right.
whatever. So we would not be involved in those.
right. So when are we involved?
Well, there are a lot of cases that don't rise to that level.
I was just gonna say, that happens so rarely that
yes.
they actually get prosecuted, that my question was to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. For instance, if that criminal charge never comes to fruition, which is unfortunately often the case, right? Because when there's prosecutorial discretion, and I've seen it in the course of my work with my clients, very seldom does that actually get charged. I wanted to make sure that that doesn't stop, that then kicks back or something, or stays open.
So they
because-
decide that we're not going to prosecute because of discretion, or we don't believe we have the evidence to prosecute, we can't make the case. So that, the question is, does it come back to you guys? And then, I'm just trying to understand what the board's involvement is with the things that, for me, generated the reason for the board.
Well, certainly, excessive use of force was probably a primary one in terms of what the public could see. I mean, we could sit here and name a few that we, know of. But I do think you've raised an issue, and I don't think there's anything so far, like in the charter, in terms of how, and I don't want to say work with, but how do we communicate effectively to the county prosecutor, to the city attorney, and how can we ensure with those entities that they are then communicating, with us, that it doesn't go into that, that round file and just stay there, nothing happens. And as we sit here right now, I don't think we really kind of know, so I don't know if that's going to mean, as chair of the board and maybe with the inspector general, asking for a meeting with county prosecutor Tyack, or with city attorney Zach Klein, so we can share our concerns and hopefully work out something so they're not just sitting there forever and a day.
Yeah, I mean, I understood our board to be, the civilian accountability board. That is, that we're providing civilian oversight so that the police handle their affairs properly. If everything is getting funneled somewhere else. I'm just trying to.
It's
get
not
us-
everything.
No.
I can assure you from
No,
looking
no,
at.
I get that, but I'm still searching for how it works.
You know what
Well-
might be good at a future meeting, and actually, I don't have it with me. If you would just could share, and I know that Deputy Director Blunt gave it to me, past years of IAB statistics, so that you can just see the nature of the types of cases that we would be looking at. I think it would be helpful
Okay.
if we did that, and I would say that's at the next meeting, because there is some confusion. So we're talking about these complaints, and yet I think you're right, we really don't know what kind of complaints. So just looking at that, I think would be helpful.
Could we
Not-
also
not
add
a-
to that
Yes.
statistically, how many of those incidents ever turn into criminal filings
Okay.
against the officers? Because I think that will help show at least what I attempted to say, which is that
Definitely.
I don't think we'll be hurting for complaints being investigated by your office because the ratio is pretty low.
Yes, and I do have that, actually, if we get a chance. I know I have on my desk the type of complaints we have, and what I did want to share is what we have done in the office that I came from is complaints that were filtered to another agency. We monitor that. That's having that relationship with the prosecutor's office to say, we're following this to you, calling and saying, hey, where is this case at? Did you guys do it? And so we follow up. So at a point in time when they say, we have determined, because the prosecutor is going to review it, they're going to make a decision as to whether or not it's going to go forward. If they say at this point in time, we're not going to prosecute the case, then we're aware of that. The case comes back to us. And then we, at that point, go forward with our investigation. But we would be monitoring.
That's what you had said that I think you missed out on. When something is kicked back, then they can pick back up their investigation and carry it on. But I do have one other thing.
So, Reverend Tatum, and then I'm going to move over to Attorney Tobias.
I think, Rich, that one of the things we need to remember, one of the reasons why this board was formed was because there are so many cases that fall through the cracks. See, and I think that I know from my constituents, that's one of the major complaints was, that these things are being lodged and it's like nobody's hearing us. It's like it just, they say, yes, we're going to do something, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, their voice is not heard. And I think that that's one of the major reasons why we're here today.
Mr. Tobias?
Thank you. I was just going to add that even if a complaint gets referred to another investigative agency for specific conduct related to an officer, under the code 23505, Section A5, it still gives the Department of the IG the ability to review and make recommendations to the board regarding Division of Police policies and procedures. And so there could still be an investigation done by the Department of the IG related to how the department handled a specific situation in relation to that officer that may be reviewed for possible criminal charges. But how did the police department itself handle that incident in terms of the way it worked with the officer and whether any discipline was handed down as it related to the incident? They still can investigate that and make recommendations to the board.
It would be very helpful to me, at least, to get some sense of a flow chart with, when is this board, not only the IG's office, but when is the board engaged? We expect that we're going to be here facing this many actual concrete cases of this sort and making recommendations either about individual conduct or about policy. Like how is this flowing so that could say, oh, okay, that's what our job is. Maybe it's clear to some of you, but it isn't to me.
I think that for me, maybe I'm just more comfortable without having all of the answers at this point in time, and that some of them will unfold. Again, we are building this. There's
I
nothing,
totally get that.
right, there's nothing, to look back. But I agree.
Yeah, just,
and I think at
just
the
trying
last
to get a
meeting,
guess of like, oh, this is, this likely situations that this board in holding police accountable or making recommendations for policies are likely to be finding ourselves in.
Okay. Mr. Thomas?
So I do have a question which is not related to this. But this kind of jogged through my mind through some of the other conversation. So when we typically talk about police misconduct and, you know, all of these things, we, I think, situate the conversation talking about adults, right? But as, you know, Brooke works with minors, is there going to be, and these are, you know, legal documents, processes that are happening, are you also going to be accepting complaints made that minors experience, right? So, you know, specifically in Columbus right now, the huge conversation is about the teenagers, right? Chair Jackson has brought this up several times. You know, she talks about her mother asking what's going on with kids, right? We've talked about this in the duration of this existence of this board. And so my concern is, if children, you know, specifically during the summertime, it's about to get hot, right? So are y'all able to accept complaints not only made against minors, you know, infractions made against minors, but what about other people who may be under guardianships or things like that? Is that conversation happening about who you can accept complaints from, who is to speak for the complainant? Do you understand what I'm asking you?
And if you have a chance, I don't know if you looked at the DIG policies and procedures, because it talks about who can file a complaint, and that talks about who is able to file a complaint, talks about the guardian, talks about the process. I can give you a copy of that.
No, I have it, but can you, in the meantime, can you tell me, is that something that the office is going to do? And if not, like, who does that go to?
No, that talks about the complainant. It can be, so person who can file the complaint doesn't necessarily have to be the complainant. It can be someone that is the complainant's parent, can file on the complainant's behalf. So there, I'll show you about the complaint that we have that'll give you an idea of, I think, and I know we're making some changes to it, so I tell you, we have a draft, but there's a part in there where we had talked about who the relationship is. So again, to the answer to your question, a parent can file the complaint on the behalf of their child.
Can a minor find it for themselves?
Absolutely, because we're going to, whoever files a complaint, the investigator is going to be talking to them. And so if they talk to, let's say someone is a minor and they file a complaint and the investigator call, they're going to know not only to talk to that person, but to reach out to see who that parent is. Yeah. And someone who has guardian, because we also know that guardians are over people who may not necessarily be considered minors, but have a guardian. So yes.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And Board Member Thomas, I think we will have to look into a process for minors actually submit. That process is pretty clear, but there will be certain procedures and processes that will have to be in place in order for minors to be able to submit their own complaint to the IG.
That's what I was curious about. Thank
But
you.
very good thought.
Thank you.
And what I will tell you is one of my goals is for the June meeting, for the July meeting, is I will put together a flow chart. I still wanted to talk to more of the board to understand how, once we give them the report, the flow of how they're going to review it. So I did want to talk to the board about that, and then I will create a flow chart on how that process is going to be. Are there any more questions? I'll go on. So what I have here is just a sample of the complaint form that we designed. And as you can see, the complaint form talks about the date of the incident. It talks about the time. This is just a sample. If there's any questions, there's also a checkbox in there if the person wants to remain anonymous. It gives us information about the complainant. It also talks about if it was an officer involved, we ask for a description, badge number, some information. Then they're able to put the information on the back. You can also see on the complaint form there is a place for the complainant to sign. There's also a place for us to be able to if the complaint is taken in person, to say who took the complaint. And there's also a place for us to put the complaint number. This just allows us to kind of keep track of the complaints that we're getting. This is also a form that we are designing with the website to try to put something, I don't know if we're going to have this exact form online or if we'll have something similar that will be able to provide some of the questions that would be enough for us to be able to review the allegation and make a determination whether it's something that our office would be able to investigate. Yes?
I said a quick, I know we talked a little bit about this, but in terms of conversation around retaliation, right? So, you know, it seems hard in certain complicated situations for somebody to want to put their names or even witness names or anything like that on this particular document. Is there, I mean, what is the thought process in place to handle those? Obviously, all these situations are sensitive matters, but in those particular situations in which people might feel either listed as a witness or anywhere on this form that anybody's going to be able to find at some, you know, like at what point in terms of the confidentiality aspects versus the things that become public record, like where are people along that cycle so that people feel comfortable submitting complaints?
Well, the thing that I will say is because right now with the Ohio Sunshine Act, a lot of things are just open. Plus, based on the FOP, any documents that we have that we're looking at, the Fraternal Order is able to have copies of that. So any investigation that we do, we have to be able to document what our findings are. We also have to be able to support that by the information. I do understand what you're saying. That would be something that we would have to talk over with the attorney. But information is going to be important. And if you're writing a investigation report up, you have to put information in there. You're going to have to know who the witnesses are if they saw this, because the witnesses are going to help to support whatever accusation that complainant may have. And I don't know if we're able to do, and I don't know if this is your question, but I don't know if we would be able to have a complaint in which we have a finding and we're not able to bring to the board who those witnesses are, because this is information that we're going to be presenting to the board, and the board's going to want to know that information. And so what I can say is that, you know, when we're doing the investigation, we will make sure that all the information is there, and we will work with the attorney's office to see what can be available to the public, what cannot be available to the public. But as far as our investigation and what we present to the board, we're going to have the information to be able to present to the board to be able to support what our findings are.
If I might say, and I don't want this in any way to sound, you know, naive, but it is certainly my hope that the very creation of this board and the creation of this process in the Office of the Inspector General will abate some of the resistance that citizens might have. And even a part of it, not just the creation, but how these individuals that are before me will interact with the public. You're going to have to build trust with people. And I don't think it's about a form. You know, it's how you speak with them, it's how you interact with them. Because we are a community, and I'll look to the attorneys. I don't really think that there's anything that can be created within this office that isn't a public record.
Correct.
I mean, that's just that's the law in the state of Ohio.
And what I'll share, you know, when my time at the prosecutor's office, I was the director of the intake unit for 12 years. That's where all the criminal complaints came in. People from the public came in that wanted to pursue criminal charges against other people. It was really challenging to get witnesses and corroborating evidence because people did not want to step up and be named because they're not anonymous anymore. And I tried to do the same thing in my unit, build community trust, reach out to folks, have conversations with them, explain honestly what it means if they participated in the process, in the investigative process, and what potentially could happen if charges were approved. So the Department of the IG is going to have the same concerns and is going to have to do the same type of community building and establish trust with the community.
Yeah, and I think that's super helpful, and I agree. I just want to get a sense of, aside from the community trust piece, which is like filling out the form itself, is, what is in place? I mean, have we thought about what is in place to deal with retaliation, potential retaliation, all sorts of things like that? What does that process look like? Or
These are all public records, and you can't redact names, you can't redact phone numbers. Basically, social security numbers you can redact. So it's just having honest conversations with folks about what happens when they put their name or phone number on a form.
Can I say, I think just even speaking more clearly, this is an issue, I think, for me, and I'm only going to speak for me, I think this is an issue about protection, right? And so immediately when you say that, obviously it's, it's in the contract, that the FOP has copies of everything, that is terrifying to hear for me, considering the reality of the world and policing that we have lived in, right? So when your staff got up here and said that, their concern is to bridge gaps between the police and the community, and this is what this board is doing as well. I think one of the things is we can't do this alone, right? This is one of those times with this issue of assurance that we need the police and the FOP to step up and say, hey, whatever happens with these complaints, we are going to do everything in our power to assure that the people who bring them forward are protected in an adequate way. And that is something that I want to hear from the police. I want to hear that from the partnership. I want to hear that from the prosecutor's office, because like I said, we can only do so much in this room with these forms and this staff. But other people have to show up to the table to agree to keep our citizens safe and protected. Because even though, whether we want to admit it or not, this goes into the retaliation thing, that you have trouble with in your prior work. This is a huge part of that, right? Feeling safe to bring these things forward, knowing that it's not going to come back around. And so I think to Kyle's point, I know everything is, public record, sunshine, all of that, but there has to be some level of assurance outside of, well, these are just public records, there's nothing that we could do about it, right? Because that is a huge part of building trust, right? Because a central component of trust is safety. And so I'm just concerned that our community members may not feel safe with this process if there isn't something concrete there. What that is, I don't know, but there has to be more than just our hands are tied. You know what I'm saying?
Two quick things. Going back to the
Then we're going to take a break.
Going back to the youth anonymity piece, when you all are looking about your process for kids, one thing to remember, one is that kids can be charged with crimes in juvenile court and can have conflicts with parents. So I do think there should be an allowance for children to be able to file irrespective of whether a guardian is signing off on the complaint. Second, also within our juvenile justice system, we do not release the names of children who are involved in court actions. And so I would hesitate very much to make any child's complaint, and that goes all the way up to the age of 18, available as public records.
I believe the ORC already accounts for that, and that is not considered a public record under 149.
I was going to say,
Just to clarify, we use initials and age.
great, as long as I'm saying it here, because that's a huge important thing. My last point, I cannot remember, and I haven't seen it, but I do know that NACOL does encourage the allowance of filing anonymous complaints, and I can't remember if our FOP contract specifically stated with the creation of our board that that would not be allowed. So I would just throw it out in the air if somebody could go check both of those things, because I think that's important for this discussion as well, is whether that is a change that has to be negotiated in future contracts, because it is something that a national standard does recommend allowing, is anonymous complaints.
So the FOP does allow anonymous complaints. I think where we get restricted by time is you have a certain amount of time to reduce that complaint down to writing and begin the investigation. And so again, the importance of corroborating information is where we'll reiterate, right? An anonymous complaint still has to have enough information to be corroborated so that an investigation can be started in the timeline that the FOP dictates.
We will be adjourned until 3:45. Thank you. The folks in the back, are you ready? Okay. I think we're ready to reconvene. And I'd like to thank the IG's office for providing a variety of snacks today. And so, IG Hendricks, are you ready to resume?
All right, thank you. Are there any more questions on the form? If not, I'll move on.
Just had one comment about the form. I was probably going to say this to Tara, but I'll just reach out. Is there going to be any disclaimer anywhere on the form about it being a public record? Maybe I missed it and it's already on there.
We don't, but I'll make a note of that so we can do that, make it
Just at the bottom, there should probably be a disclaimer. The other thing, again, I don't want to necessarily cause a firestorm, but is there going to be any disclaimer about like a falsification offense, like, you know?
Absolutely. We just didn't know, and since you're here, you'll be able to tell us. We just didn't know the reference, so we would have to reference what that is in the.
Probably just send you a copy of my old intake complaint form that has it on there.
Yeah.
I had a brief question in terms of like documentation status, for example. So like wanted to make sure in those particular situations, like what happens in that, I don't want to put anybody in a situation in which they don't want to be. So what happens in those situations where it's a non-citizen that might be listed as?
You mean an undocumented
Yeah,
immigrant?
yeah. So that might be listed here, or somebody puts them on as a witness or something, and, you know, what's that process gonna look like?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm trying to relate back to one of my clients is Department of Neighborhoods, and we did the disclaimers for what we just talked about on the 311 system, but I don't know if we addressed anything regarding non-documented individuals, so definitely look into that.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing that, you know, we can definitely let the complainants know is that they can, if they just put information on there, we're still going to call them and talk to them about, you know, what the allegation is. And they're still going to be asked, you know, is there any people that you have? So if they don't want to note it on the form and they just want to wait to have that conversation with us, they can do that also. So I just wanted to go over the investigation process, so the board was familiar with the investigation process. So again, once the complaint has been received and been approved, and it's been entered into the system as an investigation, the investigation will be assigned to an investigator to investigate. The steps, and these are just, you know, just a brief step, would be to notify the complainant. They are to notify the complainant within 48 hours that they are the investigator handling the investigation, and also to talk to the complainant to get more of detail about what the allegation is. That will, again, help us make sure that we're determined whether or not that falls within the charter mandates and our jurisdiction to investigate that. After that, what they'll be doing, and I do have some forms after this to show you. So our in-office form is going to be an action plan memo. That's the action plan memo that the investigators will be filling out and sending to me and the deputy. And it's really outlining what plans they're going to take. It talks about the allegation, them being able to identify what the allegation is, and the steps that they will be taking in which to investigate this. It allows them to also have an outline for themselves to follow, and also in that plan it talks about the anticipated number of days they feel to complete this. Then they will conduct the investigation. Once the investigation is conducted, they will write an investigation report. That report will be submitted to me for review. Again, me and the deputy will be reviewing the report. When it talks about the evaluation of the investigation, it's evaluating the investigation, the documents, making sure that it's thorough, we don't have any questions. As you can see, there's a two-way arrow, because if there's questions, it will go back to the investigator for them to be able to answer whatever questions that we have. If we don't have any questions, it will be approved by me, and that investigation will be forwarded to the Civilian Review Board. The Civilian Review Board is going to have an administrative secretary. You know, that's somebody we're going to be housing in our office. And so I will work with the board. What I can tell you is I envision, and this is just based on the FOP, is that they don't consider the investigation closed until it has been forwarded to the board. So what the process will be is the executive assistant will have a folder in which they will get those complaints, and they'll go in the folders. And so we know that the board has a subcommittee that you guys have been working on that's going to be reviewing those reports. And so you'll be working with the executive secretary. They'll have a date as to when you want all of those reports to be forwarded. You may want those, you know, a week or 2 weeks before, or you might just want them forwarded before you have the meeting. But we will be working with that to make sure that process flows smoothly. Again, so you also have access to the folders in case there's, not only are you reviewing the reports, but if you have some questions and you actually want to look in the folder to pull up some documents yourself. So just giving you a copy of what some of the forms look like. This is the action plan. And as you can see, the action plan talks about just putting a summary. These are all documents that are going to be in the file too. So this again helps the board to be able to say along with us, you know, this is what the summary of the allegation is. Of course, if the allegation is just like a couple of paragraphs, they'll probably just copy and paste that. But if it's 2 or 3 pages, they're going to have to summarize what that complaint is. They will summarize not only what the complaint is, what the allegation specifically that we are looking at. and then it talks about the overall objective. What's the overall objective? So if the complaint is involving some type of misconduct involving an officer, then the overall objective is going to be what that misconduct is. Action plan is going to say what their plan of action is, whether it's interviewing citizens, interviewing complainants, if it's something that happened out on the street, are they getting video footage from maybe local places, if they did a walkthrough, if it's body mics. Their action plan is going to specifically say what they're doing. I think that's great information. That might be a question I would say not only we would have, but even the board might be able to answer, say, hey, well, this occurred outside. Did they do a walkthrough? Did they do a canvas? So the action plan is going to lay that out. It should also lay out whatever policies and procedures they may be looking at in relation to what the allegation is. And then the estimated days of completion is going to be an estimated days that they feel is going to take them to complete that complaint. Across, you'll see is the Garrity advisement form that I did submit to our attorney, and they were able to review that and get that back. So we know that when you are interviewing officers, they get a advisement of their Garrity rights. So this is something that each officer will get. They'll read it, they'll sign it, they'll date it, so that they know that they have been advised of their Garrity rights. It also references the charter, the FOP, and the fact that they have to that they are to cooperate with us in our investigation. If they do not cooperate, it can possibly be insubordination and what actions could be taken if they don't. This is a sample of the investigative memo that we will be putting together and presenting to the board. As you see that I have it going to the board, it's coming from our office. It talks about a summary. Some of these investigations might not be long, some may be very long. I feel a summary, which is just a brief synopsis of what the allegation is and what our findings and recommendations, I feel the summary should be kind of good for the board if they don't want to read the whole report, you just want to glance at it. We should be able to provide you just a summary. The complaint information kind of is going to be able to say, you know, what date did the incident occur, the date that the complaint was filed with our office, the type of complaint, was it misconduct or excessive use of force. Again, there are some parameters that we want to use in matrix. So again, if we wanted to provide a report to the board, and this is what we're working on, so I'm hoping we're going to be able to accomplish this. So I could probably do a report that says, hey, this is how many misconducts we had, and then we'll break that down into another subtotals. Boom, this is how many allegations of use of force complaint we have, and then we can break those down to specifically to what type of complaints those were. They'll have the complainant's information, it'll say who the case manager is, who was the investigator that handled that, and it will give the date that the investigation was assigned. And then we get into the allegations, being able to give a brief summary of what the allegations is so that the board understands exactly what the investigation entailed based on what the investigation entailed. So if you look at the further breakdown, then it'll get into who the officers were involved, information about the officer, any disciplinary history that the officer had, if applicable to what the complaint is. We want to make sure that whatever the allegation is, if there's something in their investigation, in their disciplinary history that was applicable to that, that will be put in there. So that would be a question that if the board had, we would be providing. And findings of the investigation. Then you'll see the part where it talks about evidence reviewed. It's going to tell you who the interviews were, documents, what we reviewed to give the conclusion that will be given into the investigation. And then you have the conclusion and then what the recommendation is. So the 3 lines I put there can definitely be altered. You just let me know what the board prefers. The first line obviously will be for the Inspector General to sign off on the investigation, meaning that it was read, I approved it, and I'm submitting it to the board review committee. So what I did is I had a line there for the chair of the review committee, because the chair is the person you guys are going to come together. Y'all be reading it. And so maybe the chair would be the one that would sign off if you agree with everything, you don't have any questions, and you don't want to route it back to my office. And then I put a line in there for the board chair, because I envision that the sub-chair is, once the committee reads it, if they approve it, then they're going to be bringing it, before the board, for the board to approve it. And so there is a signature block in there for the chair to sign off that the board has, approved the report.
Should there be a line there if it gets sent back, so you can keep track of those in the forms as well?
Say that again?
Should there be a line there if the form gets sent back, so you can keep track of that on the form as well? So you said if we all approve it, we would sign it, but if it's not approved, should there be some notation on the form as well to keep track of that as well?
What I'll be doing is providing a memorandum for the board. So if the board sends a report back, then the memorandum will have the list of questions that the board has, and then that'll have a date. But that'll be a standard form, and that you can just kind of submit to the executive assistant to the board to say, hey, these are, I'm assuming the chair of the subcommittee would type out all the questions that you have, and then that would come back to us with the report, and then that way we would be, answering any of the questions that you have.
Thank you.
I just have a brief question in terms of the timeline for when you guys complete this portion and then the Civilian Review Board reviews a particular thing. Is there kind of a process in place, or do we have thoughts in place for in the future, knowing that you might not have a Civilian Review Board that meets every month, for example, and meets less frequently, kind of with that timeline from completed, or your job is done and you're just waiting for the sign off from the Civilian Review Board? Do we have a plan for that in place? If we're not meeting for 3 months, for example?
So we, Janet and I were just talking about that. So in our rules and regulations, we talked about the need to form the review subcommittees, and those are something that we have to actually do. So once we have them, then the review subcommittees can meet and read their reports ad hoc, and then whatever our regularly scheduled board meeting can either be the time that we're going over the reports and reporting out, or we can specifically request or hold meetings to go over those. But we actually have to create the subcommittees to review.
And I do not anticipate that we're going to go to like quarterly meetings. So for this board, you should just keep in mind that I plan on still monthly meetings. And again, we may find that the workload is such that we may even have to add. At this point, Kyle, I just don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just thinking in terms of future boards down the road within the charter. I think it's you have to meet once a quarter, 4 times a year, right? So future board decides to do that. Like, what is the mechanism to make sure that the Civilian Review Board does its job at that point? I didn't know.
And I think we have to have the experience of at least a year of this before we can answer that. Again, I'm not one for speculating. I mean, I need to see how things unfold. And so I think we, the board, need to have the experience of the Inspector General and her team conducting the investigations. What's the workload going to be? And then as we see that, we will need to address that issue.
Okay, yeah, because I wasn't sure if there's best practices, because we could very well become a bottleneck to this process.
Well, the one thing that I would
I will not let that happen.
I'm just saying, the board.
No, I heard what you said, and I'm saying I will not let that happen in terms of this being a bottleneck.
That's good.
Rest assured.
That's good. That's good.
Future regulations. He's thinking 100 years from now.
Yeah, that's right.
Beyond your tenure.
And one of the things that, I will make it a point that we will put in place to stress to the board is any disciplinary actions, because there is a part in the FOP when I was reading that talks about disciplinary and grievances. So we want to make sure that the reports are reviewed, and if there's any disciplinary recommendations to the board, that they're done in a timely manner. So, yeah. But I think what we will do is if we have a report that is, that's very, very important, we'll make sure that we put important on it, and we'll make sure that we let the subcommittee board know so that they know might be something they might want to look at a lot sooner.
And this just picks up on something that you said, Kyle, before. I wonder if it wouldn't be helpful if there was a place in the form to indicate whether this particular officer had other complaints. We're not going to remember, Officer so-and-so 8 months ago, there was something else. It would be very helpful to see if there is a pattern of incidents, not one incident with multiple witnesses, but one officer with multiple incidents, so that we're beginning to see that this is the fourth time there's been a suggestion of excessive force, but it didn't rise to the level of criminality, or the third time that there's been abusive language or something. When we see a cumulative pattern, it may be that any one incident would be, understandable, but 3 or 4 would suggest there's something wrong, but we won't know that by just reviewing something that you looked at and said, there were allegations, but we couldn't find enough evidence to suggest that this rose to that level. Now there's another one. I'd sure love to know if an officer had 3 complaints against them, and I understand that in court, we don't do that. I understand that. I understand that.
And even around, certain timeframes, if it was 3 times, and I forgot what the maximum time period is that those records are kept, I do have a concern, and I'm not saying, absolutely we shouldn't, but I think we should give it some real thought. I see definitely going down a slippery slope. And again, time period, some other things we should look into before we just say to you, IG, we want this done. I think, and even to have more conversation about it, maybe to find out some specifics about, because I don't recall, I think that was maybe in the information shared about the FOP contract around the time period.
The time to 2 years or something like that.
No, but I think we need to specifically go back and to look at what the contract says, and then to think about it from our, so I would ask at this point that not be put on the form. And I would say that at our next meeting, that we come back to that as a specific agenda item.
I'll speak to that too, but, you could also envision a scenario, because we're talking about all of this being public record. You could also envision a scenario where if the Civilian Review Board body or the Department of Inspector General does not do that, that you could envision an outside group, community group, nonprofit, somewhere else that actually compiles this information consistently. So something to think about, I just in terms of somebody's going to be collecting that information. And so I understand the concerns about, impartiality and kind of infringing upon that in terms of biases. But I do think that, just to the point earlier about public information, all these reports are going to be public as well.
I do want to say this, though, since we're talking about public record. If the IG has investigated an officer before and investigated an officer again, that is public record. So all we got to do is say, well, Miss IG, has this officer been investigated before? If we've forgotten about it, and she can look it up for us and let us know that information. I don't think that we have to put it on the form or anything.
Well, we'd have to do that every single time, and if we get 50 complaints
I'm going to ask you to simply table this conversation until next month. We are going into the last hour. I don't actually know how much more there is. But again, I made a note for next month's meeting.
Well, I didn't realize I would talk so long. I'm going to go on to the next form. Okay, so this form just kind of gives you a little breakdown of what our findings would be, whether it would be exonerated, substantiated, non-substantiated, sustained, unfounded, and there's a part that talks about withdraw the complainant, withdraw the complaint. I'll look at the other form. The other form is a form that I created. I put a draft on there because that was sent over to our attorney, Ms. Ross, and she's still looking at that. It's a confidentiality agreement. This is an agreement that I will be expecting all of my staff to sign so that when we are doing investigations, that they are not to discuss those investigations outside of this office because they are confidential. So she's still reviewing that, and once she reviews that, we'll take draft off. I just think that's important for the nature of our investigations, that everything that is discussed in-house is just confidential. Continued department goals. So goals for June will be to hire the staff. We talked about still, we're still looking at our executive secretary training for the group. So what I can tell you is for the training, we still got more training going on. So I want to make sure that the rest of the staff is trained. With the website, again, it's getting the website up and running, putting some more information on there. We are working with the materials for our outreach campaign. Again, that's working with the Saunders PR group. We're also working with the city's print to be able to print that information.
Can you share with us now the types of materials? And so, for example, I mentioned, I think we used to call them a hot card. It just gives the basic information, but I'm also thinking brochure. But could you just share with us what you are thinking about at this point?
So what we're thinking about, again, is just a small card. No, I shouldn't say small card, just a card big enough that will just kind of say what the IG's office are, maybe putting a couple of questions on there, hotline, the main line, charter mandate, just for the IG's office, also for the Civilian Police Review Board. So just kind of a small card, that's what we're looking at. We also have talked about putting together like your regular business cards, because you guys mentioned having like a little hot card. We thought about that would be really good, something that you can have in your person. If somebody says they want some information, you can just pass that out. We'll be meeting again with the Saunders PR group tomorrow. So with that, they're really experts on that, and they're going to really help us kind of put some things together. We did send something over to the graphics department, but it's just, again, like that little card, just that information. So outreach, I think I told you, and we talked about that, so I made some notes to make sure that when we start putting together how that looks, that we are making sure that we're reaching out to the board and including the board. Goal for July really is to be ready. The main reason I wanted to present all of this information to the board this month in June is for any suggestions, anything that you didn't see, and I made some notes for some things that you feel that we need additional. But as it stands right now, with everything that we've presented for you, if we were to go operational today, we would be able to accept complaints and start processing them. The only thing we don't have is our case management system, but that would not stop us from accepting complaints and putting numbers on there and starting to do the investigation.
I'm going to suggest, there are several things that are draft and some things where the attorneys need to have input. I think that members of the board would probably like to see those again before they are official, which they should be official in July. Mm-hmm. So working with Colleen, I think those should be emailed to us.
If we can get a copy of these slides also.
Yes, that would be helpful. That would be helpful. And really just in terms of in the future, whether it's you, I.G. Hendricks, or others, I am one. I like to have the slides in front of me. As you're presenting, I like to make notes and whatever. So for future, if you're making presentations, please have those presentations in addition to the way you have them here for the board going forward.
Okay.
Do board members have any other comments on on the updates, and I'm going to ask the members of the board who are here now, and members of our expanded team, as you look at your calendar or whatever right now, are you available, will you be available for a meeting on July the 5th?
I will not.
You will not. Anyone else?
I will. I emailed Colleen and said I was.
Okay. So then, Colin, it's really just reaching out to the 4 board members who are not here, and then we'll, after you get a response from them, we'll chat. Sorry, you are not available?
I am here.
Okay, all right. She will soldier on in your absence. Yes.
I don't have questions. Thank you very much, Inspector, and all of you all for being here today. Mine is just reminders, because August is soon approaching, that we have an annual report to do. So that is something that at our next meeting, we probably should flesh out the components of that and what that looks like. Also, I think at our next meeting, we should look to create our review subcommittees, because after that next meeting, technically at any time, we could get reports from IG Hendricks that our subcommittees would need to review.
Did you get guidance from council that they wanted the report a year after the formation of the board?
So I believe that the last time we all touched base, it is due this August with, I think, just an overview of what has transpired this year, but I have no other details. So
And that's coming from who?
that's our board report that we have to give to city council annually.
But who were you talking to?
Just in our last meeting, we talked about it briefly as a, don't forget, this can't fall off our radar sort of thing. I have not spoken with Ms. Baker Morris, but I can reach out to her.
I think there was some discussion as to whether city council wanted it a year after the board was formed or just calendar year, like in December. So you guys were gonna check to see what they wanted. I guess you could always do one in August and then again in December and then go from
Yeah, 'cause
December.
it would just appear to me that it's still a little premature. I mean, yes, there's all of the information about, the building, et cetera, but it seems to me that they would, if we are going to be operational in July, that there would have been some work done by the Inspector General in terms of investigations and recommendations, and that would just be a little bit more informative. So I don't know who calls who I need to speak to or someone about exactly when do you expect this.
I'm just looking at the statute in terms of the,
I actually thought it was April when we were formed.
let's see here. The Civilian Police Review Board shall report, it just says annually, to City Council on the disposition of complaints, the outcome of investigations, as well as the board's actions and recommendations, which may include. So it actually looks like that annual report is you won't have any information to report. I think the board had discussed just doing a mini report, if you will, about like what took place over the first year, just for informational purposes. But this report probably would come in December then, because there'll be some more data.
Okay. I'm sorry, were you finished? Those questions?
Oh, yeah, just if anybody has questions, and so I would probably just say with the report, I'll just, get with Madam Chair to find out, we know we'll be servicing you guys, so we just need to know how that looks and what you want us to do, because we can start drafting a report for you.
I would just say in terms of the priorities right now, and if I need to talk to someone from City Council, I will. Your priority is to get this office up and operational, get your staff trained, start investigations, and doing community outreach. I mean, like I said, there isn't a whole lot to report right now, so I don't want any of your time being taken up with that at this point in time.
Okay.
Is there any disagreement from the board members? I'm sorry, was that judicial voice? You can't take on too much, and they have such important work, including, not only the whole thing about the investigation, but getting out into the community. That is a biggie, and again, going back to trust and just everything else, I'm anxious for that to start, happening. And I guess I do want to ask the board members who are here, do you have thoughts on the process that we should use for identifying who might want to go to meetings? I think in a previous meeting, and we've got this timing where some of these meetings may be taking place and we don't meet until July. It could be something as simple as I.G. Hendricks, you have scheduled, between you and Ms. Younger, you've scheduled the meetings and literally passing around a sheet and people signing up for, keeping in mind only 2 or 3. I don't want there to be those meetings when we are not represented. I just think it's also important to the community that they're not going to get to meet all 11 of us, but still that we are very invested in this work and invested in the community.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
About that. So I'm on the, what is this committee called? I'm on the Community Outreach Committee, committee with Mary. And one of the concerns I've had is the expectation that we would go out and be able to be essentially the content experts at this, right? And so one of the concerns I do have about, or rather I'm asking, what is the expectation of our performance at these meetings, right? Because I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions and things that I just like.
I think there'll be more questions here.
Okay, so, but you understand what I'm asking though, or saying like,
No,
I
really
ain't
think
got
that the
info.
questions will be around the complaints.
So we're there as a presence essentially.
We're there as a presence,
Yeah.
to identify ourselves,
Yeah.
to interact.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm the one who, and again, I think these are structured meetings. Area commissions actually have, agendas. For me, I would always want to get there early just so I can shake hands and say hello to people, because once that meeting starts, you're going to be sitting or whatever, you can't be the mingling. I don't know what's going on over here, but there's something. But
represent all 21 area commissions.
Oh.
We'll talk later.
I didn't realize that, Mr. Tobias.
Wow.
But that is certainly, kind of my thought, is to provide support.
But you understand what I'm asking? You know what I'm saying? I want to make sure that we meet the expectation that is being set before we agree to,
Okay.
just be up there talking whatever. Yeah,
I would not expect for us to have speaking roles.
okay. Good.
Now, I would say and I don't know if Ms. Younger has expressed expectations for the committee and for herself. I just don't know. Does she plan on attending all 21 as the chair of that committee? And I'm sure we will certainly, learn. We will learn that.
She has stated, that she would like to see the committee try to be to as many, and we can spread out, and try to work amongst ourselves to accommodate. But one of the other things that and I know I volunteered because I serve in the Linden area. So I did volunteer to make sure that I would be there for our IG when she does come to our both North and South Linden area commissions. So I do plan on being there for both of those.
And one of the things that, so are there 5 individuals on your committee?
1, 2, 3, 5, yeah.
5, okay. We'll have to keep in mind committee representation and then the other 6 of us. Because again, I'm always thinking about that rule of 6, and so that we don't get anywhere close to that number. So you may be thinking that at each of these, you would have at least 1 committee member, maybe 2, and then 1 additional person that pulls from the full board around those logistics. Anything else? Yes.
I'm guessing you're starting to wrap up, so I just have a
Now, I have an open-ended item on the agenda.
Yeah, I have a housekeeping thing that I'll save for the end. But just in regard to going to the area commission meetings, I know there was discussion previously about any individual board member speaking on behalf of the entire board. And that's obviously something that you should be very aware of when you're going to these area commissions. It's a little different for the IG. It's her own department. She can basically say what she wants. but it's a little different for the board. And so I could show up at all 21 meetings with you, but I just think you're trying to build trust in the community, and me being there may not be productive in that vein. So, why'd you bring your lawyer with you, you know? I could just see folks saying, why'd you bring your lawyer with you? So, just be mindful when you're there. It's for introduction, it's for informational purposes, it's for trust building and community building, but just be cautious in terms of the types of statements that you're making, and that you're not making them seem like they're coming on behalf of the board.
Okay, thank you for the reminder. So thank you this is just a wonderful meeting to actually meet the team, hear all about the process. This is just great. I had an item, just open discussion, future board meetings. Now, today, it seems as if maybe I may have enough for the July board meeting, maybe not in terms of topics. I think there is still one training piece that needs to get scheduled, and that's de-escalation, and I haven't forgotten about that. And so, and Colleen is smiling because she reminds me. So maybe to reach out to, forgotten who takes care of that. But looking at our July and August meeting to see if they would be available for that. So certainly the agenda have been driven by training, driven by the IG, the whole process of the hiring and the work since then. But I just want to ask the board members who are here, what else would you like to see at our meetings? Now, again, I'm asking that. It could be that by August or September, it's going to be a lot of the work coming from the IG. I just don't know. But as we have worked together and if you thought about it, is there something that we haven't covered, even if it's an open discussion, that you really would like to see on a future agenda? Yes?
I think I do. I believe it's still important to hear from the community in specific community areas that fall into the category of what you would call over-policed. I think us hearing as a board some of their experiences, what they're living with, and their thoughts about policing in this board and all that, I think that will be really fruitful for us as a board to hear from them.
Okay. So I'll just kind of clarify. Are you suggesting that certain communities be invited into this room for a meeting? Are you suggesting that we go to the community as a full board?
No. So last week, there was a conversation held with the chief of police and assistant police. Was that Faith in that put it on? I forget the name of the org. But you know what I'm talking about? There's an org that is part of their arm right now is about having these conversations, right? So I feel like groups like that are doing this on the ground work, I think would be important for us to hear about, like a presentation about what it is that they do, how do they serve the community, how do they get started, all of that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I think hearing from community action groups could be important for our board.
Okay.
Like, for example, when the IG, like the Mothers Against Violence, or not Mothers Against Violence, what is this called? What is the organization called?
I think, yeah, Mothers Against Murder.
Groups like that, I would like to hear from about what their advocacy work looks like. How do movements like this support the work that they're doing? I think that could be beneficial to what we are doing here as well.
Could I hear other thoughts from other board members on this topic?
I would just like to know how does that fit into what we have been called to do, especially when we've already got the IG who's already talking to these various entities and seeing how what the IG's office can do to incorporate and work to make things better with this so-called bridge building that we're trying to do here. Because me personally, I just don't know. I'm out there all the time, so I get a chance to talk to these various groups and stuff, but I'm just trying to figure out how does that allow us to utilize what our charter is and use our time wisely in these meetings. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm not saying that that's not a bad idea. I'm just saying, how does it fit into?
I think it's the other side of the coin. That's how it fits in. I think we've heard from the police, right? We've heard about, their training. Why are we not hearing from the other side, right? That only makes sense to me as a complete picture.
I think community engagement is critical. I think, the most important thing is that there's ongoing community engagement, right? So getting a sense of what the Department of Inspector General's continuous process will be, and obviously the community relations coordinator will play a role in that. I actually do think the idea of future meetings down the line where, similar to other opportunities that like city council does, where we actually meet in different areas of the community, have more opportunity. It would be a different type of meeting, but have more opportunities to engage the public on a set of things, like not talking about specific cases or anything like that, but a set of things I think would be useful so that people are aware of what we do. We can hear from them on a particular matter. The reason why I think that's useful is because the first year and a half of this board has been us putting the nuts and bolts together of what this looks like. But after a while, we're going to get pretty, it's going to be the same thing pretty consistently. And so I do think an opportunity to change it up by being involved and engaged as a full board in different communities would be useful, I think. I don't know what it looks like. I'm not sure. I don't think it has to be a regular meeting in this type of context, but I do think it might be useful to get out in different areas as well.
I think you may find yourself opening up a whole can of worms that you don't want to open, especially in certain communities, because you have people that are just looking for an opportunity, to create problems. And especially, just say, for instance, if we have a set agenda that we're there for, I guarantee you there's going to be one person out there in that audience that's going to have their own set agenda, and they're going to try to have something that they want to hear answer from us. And if you try to say, well, that's not what we've come here for, and it's going to open up a whole nother can of worms. That's just my personal.
Yeah, no, look, I think that's true, but I mean, we're a public body. I mean, we
are a public body where our work has been very specifically specified. It has been absolutely laid out in the law. I will tell you that as I sit here, that before I would put that on an agenda, we would have to have a full discussion and a vote by this board, because I'm not in favor of it. And for many of the very reasons that Reverend Tatum has articulated, I don't think it's our work. I don't think it was anticipated. And it is, again, I'm out I may not be in all 21 of these areas, but I am someone that's in and about Columbus on a regular basis. I interact with folks. I may interact with individuals, who are activists, but to take an 11-person board into, I'm not even sure where, and that makes it a board meeting, and all of the things that have to happen around that, I would find very challenging. So if we can, I'm not going to say it's going to go on the July board meeting. If we want it on the August, can have a full discussion and a vote, yes.
Oh, yeah, so what I'm referring to is future meetings. I'm not thinking this is going to be our July or August meeting. I'm thinking down the road when every single meeting is the same meeting that happens, is like, here's a report, and then we've got a couple of things. There could be opportunities to provide more engagement with the board, like with the board itself. Now, you can structure the meeting in which there's a certain time frame for public input or public comment outside of a specific set of cases. I just think that might be useful as a body, because you're exactly right. You might be out in the community, but you are not you as the chair is a little different, but still individual board members are not representative of the board. There is an opportunity when we are out in public to be more representative and accountable to the public as a board in ways that someone's not going to be driving downtown to come up to this meeting and see. I'm not saying it has to happen all the time, but I think it might be useful. I understand that there might be some cans of worms that you open up, but I do think in the future, it could be a useful option.
Can I ask a point of clarity just real quick? So there's two ideas that we were talking about. I was not talking about bringing this group to the community. I was asking simply of a training idea to hear from these groups. Are you saying that you're not in favor of hearing from these groups or going out into the
So,
community?
Mr. Thomas, when you started, and I wrote the words down, you said to hear from the communities that are impacted by over-policing.
Correct.
Right? And then you said hearing from community action groups. So for example, and I'm not recalling the name, but the pastors group, I have met with, before we were created, in the mayor's office, but to me, two entirely different ideas. Going to a community that has been over-policed versus having
Representatives?
certain people. No, but are they representatives of the community, or are they represented, again, with the pastors? I think some of them, the group, either pastors that I'm speaking of, and I think the one that I'm thinking of, the leadership comes from downtown, and I think it's the Presbyterian Church on Broad Street. That's the group that has met.
Congregational.
Pardon?
The congregational church, yeah, it's.
Talking about first.
Right, but there are a
First
group of
congregation.
pastors, and Reverend,
Yeah, yeah.
is it Ahern, who leads that? And we're very much activists in terms of advocating for certain things with the mayor around us, around policing, and other things. It might be helpful to add to the conversation for you to specifically take on the assignment of identifying the groups that you're talking about,
That's fine, I'll do that.
okay?
Yep.
And then we'll come back to this,
All right,
which again is very different than what Mr. Strickland was talking
correct,
about.
yes,
Okay?
yes.
Anything else for future meetings? No?
We just have one housekeeping item when you're
Yes.
done, just to inform the board. City Council did adopt a resolution last night approving your rules and regulations, so that was a good thing. And so I'm going to just work with Colleen to make sure that we get those and the professional conduct document that you adopted published in the city bulletin, hopefully soon.
Soon?
So
And Colleen, could you send those to me, because I wasn't at the last meeting and they weren't attached to the minutes? I've seen drafts, but I didn't see the final, and I'd like to have the final.
so
Okay.
everything's on a good timeline.
Thank you, thank you. Anything else?
I would like to say once again to our IG, I think that you and Mr. Blunt have done a great job in assembling your team. I think it's very diverse, a whole lot of pieces that will work. I believe that will work well to come together for the one part. So we just want to, I personally want to say thank you. Thank you.
I would agree. May the chair have a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor, raise your hands. We are adjourned.